recommendations are slightly out of date. So this is important for making sure that you defend the companies you work for, or whatever you do, most effectively. I'm going to tell you about the latest techniques for how to mitigate against them, provide IOCs, and also how the threat has evolved, but not only that, how it's going to evolve and what you can expect. Yeah, let's get into it. So, some rudimentary terminology things to get out of the way. DPRK stands for Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the official name of North Korea. I'll use both names interchangeably. ITW stands for Information Technology. KVM stands for Keyboard, Video, and Mouse in this instance. You can use to control oftentimes multiple computers through just a single set of keyboard, webcams, monitor, etc. There is also IP KVMs, which just means it's network controlled, so you can control it remotely. So who is the North Korean ITW threat? So simply put, North Korean ITW threat. So simply put, North Koreans apply for and actually work remote jobs to a scam. They're doing the work to generate the income. And ITW operations come from North Korea's cyber warfare agencies, which is a pipeline they've been training for the past 20 years or so. They have large universities that contribute to this, and other bureaus like Bureau 121. ITWs are usually men with families back at home. Unfortunately, North Korea is still very sexist, so you won't find any women who are working in this operation. Although who knows, but that might change. And also, the political elite tend to be the people who are involved with this. Those are the people who are living in Pyongyang, are the family members of people in the regime, higher up government officials. Those are the people who can actually get into the schools that allow them to do this work. So the people that you might encounter that are doing this are not your rural, really disunfortunate people in North Korea. These are often kind of very close to the top. They're often, but even then, they're still ejected to excessive work hours, constant surveillance by North Korea. There's pictures of, in different FBI filings of the different apartments they'll have, and they'll have rows of different outfits for the different jobs right in the apartment. They'll have CCTV cameras in them. They're working more than 12 hours a day, and they have quotas and requirements for how much they have to work. So this isn't an easy job by any means. This is extremely terrible conditions to be in. Before we go any further, this will be available to you guys. I don't know why those images are so blurry, but that report is a link. So I'll put a link up on my LinkedIn somewhere, and you can get to this report from the presentation. There's a lot of information that DTech Systems has kind of collected from across the industry and their own access, and they have really good information about the organizational structure, but also a really powerful IOC guide. And so both of those are great resources that you should check out. So why do the North Koreans do this again? They make money from it. So estimates from the US Treasury put payroll generated by ITW fraud at hundreds of millions of dollars per year, although this is a little bit outdated because the UN has done new estimates that put it at over $1 billion per year now. ITWs also exfiltrate data and intellectual property from companies where they work. And if you know anything about the cyber warfare activities of China, where a lot of these are that, so you can only imagine if they're stealing this data, there's a good chance they could be selling it to countries that have an interest in that, right? And of course, if they take the data while they're working for your company, they can then extort you, not just use it against you. So they can say, hey, give us $1 million or we're going to leak this data, just like a ransomware attack in a lot of ways. Their access to sensitive systems can also create a supply chain of vulnerability, similar to the SolarWinds attack. They can introduce a 0-day into any application that they're responsible for, and then that can be introduced into a number of different companies, which can be very, very bad. There's early evidence of the more sophisticated groups from North Korea, Lazarus Group, that actually does these really sophisticated attacks. Think way back when they were hacking banks and stealing millions that way. Now they're hacking cryptocurrency exchanges as their kind of their new targets the last few years. And there's evidence that the ITWs, or at least somewhat, very vaguely, working with Lazarus, at least in sharing accounts so far. But what's really scary is what if they start working together much more seriously? What if they work together with an ITW that's at a company that has supply chain access, and the Lazarus Group people know exactly how to abuse that? So that's what scares me. There's no evidence that's happening yet, but I think that's the absolute biggest threat from this and from their access. So where do they do this from? They do it in small groups all around the world. There's over 3,000 North Korean ITWs that have been deployed according to reports from the UN. And they primarily work in the APAC region, in countries that are friendly with North Korea and would allow this sort of activity. So of course that includes China and Russia, where they have a North Korean station in Vladivostok, Russia, which is near, very, very close to North Korea, as well as I'm going to butcher this, but Pyongyang, China, which is a city on the border of North Korea and China that is very famous for being, there being a lot of cross-border activity there. They've been doing this for a long time, too. Reports suggest that the actual apartments and different offices where they were doing this in China have been around for 10 to 20 years. So while this is a new threat in many people's eyes, they've been doing this sort of work for a long time. In the picture there below, it's a little blurry, but that is actually 2 ITWs in a pool in Laos at an Airbnb. The picture on the bottom right is movement history from a group that did some research on a North Korean ITW cell, and you can see them moving from Russia to other parts of the world, kind of in that region. So how do the North Koreans do this? Well, they create, the most well-known way, this isn't the only way, but the most well-known way is they create synthetic identities. So either using AI-generated faces, ID, and everything, or they'll use a mix of someone's real identity and pictures of them and some real identity documents, or it will be completely made up. They'll create a LinkedIn for them, everything, completely synthetic identity. And then when it comes to the actual interviews themselves, they'll use deepfake software like Deepface Live, voice faking software like Voice.ai, and they'll pretend to be whoever their synthetic identity is. And that's how they've done it for a while. And that's how the news has portrayed this threat. That's how everyone is aware of it. The problem is that they're moving on to beyond this, and the recommendations still focus on this. So you'll hear recommendations like having candidates put their hand in front of their face, press their fingers into their face to show that there's actually depth, move their face back and forth very quickly to see tearing on the edges. I've seen that one as well. I've seen people say, hey, ask them to say something bad about the great leader of North Korea, ask them to insult him, but these things don't work if it's not actually a North Korean. What if it's you, any of you, doing that interview? You can say North Korea is a terrible place that's abusing his people. You can tell them whatever you want. You can put your hand in your face. You can shake it back and forth. You can shake your hair if you want, whatever. They tell you whatever they want you to do, and you can do it. And that's what the North Koreans realized. So now they're utilizing facilitators, not just for the laptops, like you may have heard of with the woman in Arizona who was arrested, but they're also using people to do the interviews. So they'll have someone like me who knows a little bit and can follow the instructions on screen, and they'll have them do the interview, and then they'll also help with things like setting up the laptop forms, helping them transfer money around, and attending daily work meetings like stand-ups that you have to be at. Okay, so let's get to the meat and potatoes of it, the actual infiltration. So how did I end up here? I used to do due diligence work for companies full-time, and I helped them manage risk and spot problems, which kind of is in this area. So a client of mine had contacted me asking for help with an urgent issue relating to the DPRK ITW threat. They had applicants from the DPRK applying to them using US-based persons as fronts. So exactly what we were talking about. These people were actually doing the interviews and not disclosing that they were doing the interview on behalf of somebody else. And the way that they found out about it, this company, is the person doing the interview saw something about Chapman on the news, and they realized, oh no, I'm working for North Koreans probably. I should probably tell the people I'm interviewing for and stop talking to these people as well. So when they told the company that, of course, they freaked out, and they messaged me and they said, what is going on? What is this? Can you help us? And I didn't know what to say, because according to what the threat intelligence says, that's not happening. It's just the deep fakes. So I didn't know what to give them for advice, how to tell them how to stop it, anything like that. So my thought process was, but what if I could pretend to be one of these willing participants and gather information from the inside? So that's exactly how to do this. So first off, I found out from the person who was involved with this that they had actually been contacted on Fiverr, on freelance platforms. And I have accounts on these platforms. So I went on to these platforms and I noticed I have the same messages. They sent them to everyone. So I could respond as if I'm just a willing participant, wouldn't be suspicious at all. So that's exactly what I did. I responded to the most recent messages, pretended to be interested, and convinced them to get an initial call with me, explain the process to me. I learned about the logistics, what I would have to do, but I didn't ask too many questions because I wanted to avoid raising suspicions. So here's that first call. Oh, I'm not on the internet, I don't think. Okay. Let me unplug this for a moment. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I give you the password.
Yep.
Hopefully these guys don't do anything evil. So it's the you're looking for like a that one.
Home?
No, the my Spectrum, yeah.
Okay.
And then where's the password here?
I can't. Not used to this keyboard. You gotta touch type. Can't touch type, I mean. Okay, there we go.
All right.
Keep in mind, I didn't cut the dead air from this, so please be patient with that. And they have a very thick accent, so please listen carefully.
Hi, can you see me? Okay, nice to meet you. Meet you as well. Okay, so as we agreed on several terms, I'd like to know some details about how do we collaborate. So, yeah, as we work on as we are going to work with your name and then going to let you be hired for the companies, I'd like some details of like Indeed or Dice and something else. I am good at it. So if you can send me some details like your date of birth and your language styles, what are you what languages are you using? Like I saw on your profile that you are good at English and something else. So if you can, I'd like some details about you so I can make a clear profile. And also, yeah, I saw that your LinkedIn and your portfolio. About LinkedIn, I have no problem, and about the portfolio, I'd like to change some things. Like you mentioned that you have a React experience about 1 year, so I will change it about 8 years as a senior level, which fits to mine. So if you can send me your portfolio projects, I will update it with the senior level. And
It's still
and if you
going.
can, I'd like to access your PC for some time, so will get the remote access to your PC, and I will give you the correct answers. Like if they ask what is React, then I will give you the answers like React is a JavaScript framework, blah blah blah. So you can read it and give them the answer. So that is how do we work. So if you can send me the remote access to your PC, then I will make some server stuff possible, and I'll make the environment setup on your site so we can cooperate easily. Great. So okay, okay, gotcha. So well, that sounds good. So if you give me the access to your personal accounts, I will start the work tomorrow. Since this is Labor Day on your site, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I'd like Yeah, first of all, happy day today. I'd like to send greetings for the holiday meeting, and you joined me on the holiday. So, as today is a public holiday in United States, I will start working on tomorrow with your credentials. So today I will work on profile account creation and updates with your credentials. So yeah, if you send me your credentials, I will start work. I can start work. So we can start work on.
Okay. Not yet. If I can just get to the next slide, I'll tell you more about it. Maybe I can use the arrow keys now. Nope. There it goes. So, one of the first things I didn't do was give them access to my computer or any of my profiles. So I had to come up with a way to make them happy while also not giving out any of my information. They already knew my name because I replied with my Fiverr, but I knew that would also be helpful because they saw this guy who has a background in open source intelligence and software development and threat intelligence, and he seems very hireable. So I'm sure that was, in their eyes, oh, this guy's a great catch. We got to get this guy some jobs. So the first thing I did is I set up a fake bait device. So basically just what looks like a laptop in the cloud. It's actually just the VM. And it had the BIOS changed, a bunch of applications installed, weird storage devices, everything they needed to make it look right. And then I had that go through my network. So if they looked at the IP, it would show up as me, even though it wasn't really me, and it was still secure. So this was the best thing I could come up with. I didn't want to just put it on a laptop because then I was worried, well, what if Lazarus comes on there and installs a 0-day and breaks out? So I was worried about all sorts of things. So that was the best solution. That also allowed me to gather some information about them because since they were connecting to my computer in the cloud, I could use something like Rustdesk for that connection, set up a self-hosted Rustdesk instance for them to connect through, and then that self-hosted Rustdesk instance would see their real IP address they're connecting from, whatever that was, and they'd still feel secure and everything. And I told them I didn't want to use AnyDesk because, AnyDesk is run by the Russians or something. I came up with some excuse. And that worked. They put in my instance and they connected to it, and then I had their IP addresses. So that was a big gain. And then I also gave them new accounts. So I set up a new Gmail that I had full control over for them to create all of the accounts with, and I logged. And I logged all of the different passwords they set and everything, so I could maintain access to the accounts. But then I could still see what they were doing. And then after I did all of this and they created all these accounts, they were convinced. So we got a second call, and this one's much better. So in this one, I asked them questions like, how do I pay you and what payment methods can I use? What if I work multiple jobs at once, and if so, how? Is this illegal? What happens if the company provides a laptop? What will you do if the company uses EDR or something or some other monitoring software? How will this work if you're not working the same hours as me? How many of these jobs have you worked, etc. So we're going to keep in mind this one doesn't have as much video. For a split second, you'll see them, and I'll pause it so you can see what they look like. But that's about it.
There you go.
Hi again. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can't see you though.
Yeah, sorry, the connection is not so good.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's...
No, I just see your profile picture. I guess we'll just go with cameras off this meeting. That's fine with me.
Yeah, cool.
So, I just kind of had a few questions about how this would work because I've done
Okay.
like use your own computer and some other stuff. So I just wanted to find out what would happen if like they sent me a computer. Like, how are you guys gonna be able to access it?
Yeah, so the best option is to use something like remote controls programs like AnyDesk. Yeah.
But won't they be able to
So-
detect that? Like if someone's remoting into my computer?
So, you mean the companies can detect it?
Yeah, because most of them have like software on their computer to detect if you install stuff.
Yeah, right. So if this not working, I did some I had such a situation previous. So in that case, we can use WebEx meetings. So no problem. That's possible. So we can use WebEx
I'll explain that at the end, just so you guys know.
meetings to host meeting and control.
Okay, okay.
By
So you
it.
could use like, so there's, yeah, but stuff like Google Meet, don't they have a connectivity where you can, yeah, they have a team your remote plugin. Okay. So there's like, there's
Yeah.
software though that works though.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how is it gonna work for when I have to pay you?
And we're back.
I.
Where? Like,
Yeah.
like how are you guys gonna be able to access it?
I went to, where was I at?
So you mean the companies can detect it? WebEx meetings.
There we go. Close enough.
So no problem. That's possible. So we
Okay, okay.
By
So you
it.
can use like, so there's,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
okay. And then how is it gonna work for when I have to pay you? Like how will that work?
So I think we agreed 35% to you and
It's gonna go to my bank account, I assume.
so it's on you. It's up to you.
Okay. Well, what options do I have? Because I mean, I can do it a bunch of different ways. Like, what do you guys prefer?
You can send money to buy a crypto wallet or the bank like Ionia or something.
What was that last part? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, Ionia. Oh, deep.
Was it? Did you say I could use a bank? Was it,
I was really hoping they'd give me a bank account number.
Yeah, in that case, you can use Ionia or PayPal. I can write on the chat.
Okay, cool, cool. Cool. And then, will you be awake during? Okay. Pay in the year. Okay, okay, yeah. And then, will you be awake during my hours? 'Cause I feel like they're gonna know something's up if like I'm only working from like 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. instead of normal business hours. And some of them have like software to make sure you're actually working too.
Yeah, of course, I can follow your time zone, so no problem.
Okay. I guess kind of one of the biggest things I'm worried about is like what happens if they find me
Oh.
out? Like what do you
Ignore
guys
that.
help me? Like what
What's supposed
do
to
I do?
happen?
So you mean
Like
I
they,
didn't get you?
like they find out like what happens if the companies I'm working for find out that like somebody is remoting into my computer?
No, that's all fine. So since so it's already legal, So because it's you get a job, it's you working on the job, so you can just say them that you also you work to me, because it's something you can handle, for example, and so I think they can't say it's illegal. You,
So it's completely
Yeah.
legal?
yeah, because you didn't lie anything to the company, right?
True, true. Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. And then have you done this a lot? Like I mean, I'm just kinda curious how experienced you are with this stuff.
Yeah, so I have been doing this for sometimes more than years, and more than 3 years.
More than 3 years, wow. How many jobs
Yeah.
have you done? That's gotta be a lot.
Yeah, honestly, I have more than 10 jobs.
10?
Something. Yes.
How much money have you made from it? I'm sorry, I'm just
No,
kidding.
no, so I don't mean at the same time. So yeah. So
At least 3 at the same time. Okay. I don't know if you caught what I said at the end there, but if he's doing 10 jobs in 3 years, he had to have worked at least 3 or so at the same time. So, and that is very common. They do work the same job at the same more than one job at the same time quite often. So just to recap a couple things about that, the biggest thing that they said was, oh, we'll just use WebEx. So what do they mean by that? Well, in WebEx, there is features like take control, request remote access. This also exists in Teams, in Google Meet, in Zoom as well. And you can turn this off, which I will show you how to do on the enterprise level for all of the companies you work for, ideally, because it's very bad. This is also how a lot of people are getting hacked from North Koreans outside of this scheme. They're using this quite a bit. Another thing I wanted to mention is that the two payment methods they're using are still the same. So they'll use Payoneer, PayPal, crypto, and then the fourth one that I didn't mention is that they will actually use bank accounts. They just didn't do it in this case. They'll have the bank account switched over to somebody that like a money mule after you get a job and onboarded. Do the bank account numbers get switched pretty quickly? And another thing is, does the laptop get shipped somewhere else than where they said their house was? So the next process was I wanted to record how they bypass steps like background checks, how they got people through interviews, how they did the identity documentation, and all that other stuff. The problem is I can't break the law. I'm not law enforcement. I can't do anything illegal. This is a DEF CON room, so I'm going to assume that everyone else agrees. Just kidding. The decision that I came up with, the line that I was willing to go to, was I'll do the interview process, record how they do the interview, but it won't actually take any jobs or anything like that. Unfortunately, it was too successful, and one of the first companies that I interviewed with was actually a U.S. contractor in the geospatial intelligence industry. Because keep in mind, my background is in open source intelligence and software development, so of course they're going to try to infiltrate some intelligence stuff with me. So I went through all the stages of the interviews, and unfortunately it worked. I received a verbal job offer from the contractor for a public trust position for $70,000 a year that would have required me to go to a different state to verify my identity. So they wouldn't have hired me, probably, but it's still very scary that I got to that point and I had a verbal offer without any sort of check to make sure I was real. Especially for somebody who doesn't have as much software development experience and can't get through the interview, is they're on your computer when the call is going. So you're sharing your screen with them through AnyDesk or Discord or Telegram or whatever it is, and they have a notepad on your screen and they're just giving you the answers as you go. So it's basically like using those AI cheating tools, except I guess it might seem more realistic because the answers aren't as AI written. Either way though, it's simple cheating. And then after that process, if they had gotten the job and they had called the company in the background checks, the other thing they do is they fudge the most recent job position you have so they can get past that. So if, for me, they made up a company, well, I think they already had one set up called Autism 360. I don't know, maybe a little bit of jab. But either way, this was the company, and if that employer had called them, they would have just said, yeah, Aidan's fantastic, he's the best employee ever, he's hella autistic, he works for us, he's the best, he's awesome, and anything else they wanted to hear. So they could have passed the background check that way. And then the other sneaky thing they did was for the job history that they had to make up to get the job, the one that was hyper specific to the job position, because that's how they do it. They make the perfect resume, jobs with the exact skills that they want, experience making exactly what they want to make. Like they just build the perfect candidate. And then for the experience they make up, well, it's not going to be on your main LinkedIn or resume, so they'll say that it's a contracting position that's under NDA, or that it's something that they don't have to reveal or verify. And then that's where the real experience was for the GIS position and all the fake work I had done. And they coached me on this fake experience before I even got to the interview, so I knew what to say. They might. I've never actually tested that. But if you call up somebody and it's not necessarily like a super native English speaker, you don't automatically assume it's fake, right? So even if you have that happen, it's not going to be like an immediate red flag. Yeah.
Do they run into a wall with language requirements? they're Polish developers trying to get into the U.S. In order to be a Polish citizen, you have to speak Polish.
Hmm.
So,
Well, that's just like the fake backstory. They weren't trying to get jobs that required Polish language competencies. So, good question though. Can we save the questions to the end though? Because unfortunately, I have a little bit more to go. So the next step was calling the feds, because to anybody looking at what I was doing, this is very suspicious, and I didn't want to get in trouble. So after I'd gathered all the information, I made several attempts to get in touch with law enforcement. Of course, you guys probably know what that's like. You submit a tip to IC3, nothing. You call the tip line, nothing. You tell your friend who works for the FBI, nothing. So that's how it went for me as well. I did all the right things, and then finally, I messaged somebody from Mandiant, because they, which I guess is now the Google Threat Intelligence Group, but either way, this person was an expert on DPRK, and they had been in all the news stories. His name is Michael Barnhart, and he's just an expert on this. So I figured if anybody could get me in touch with the right people at the FBI, it'd be him. So I messaged him, and he was great. He forwarded my information along. However, the problem is, the FBI never said whether I could publish it or not. So I have all this information that I've sent over that could be really, really sensitive, and it could be something that doesn't need to be released yet, that needs to be TLP read and is super sensitive. But I didn't know if I was allowed to talk about it, and I wanted to talk about it because it could be really useful for people to actually detect these guys right now. And so the next thing I did was I got advice from somebody who kind of had dealt with this before, and they told me to write a letter and physically mail it to the special agent in charge or something like that, the SAC, at the Milwaukee field office. So that's what I did. I double enveloped it, made it look all professional, and then finally, a few months later, we had a call, and I was able to eventually get the approval to talk about this. Sorry, there's no pictures. There's supposed to be pictures for all of this, but something's weird. Must be the internet issue.
and our streaming camera is at the 1080, so that could be
Okay.
probably us.
Okay. There is pictures online though if you watch this later. So the aftermath, I published the information. It's out there. Had my talk with the FBI. It was weird. They bought me lunch. And I went on a merry way. And I published the information. And what I didn't expect is how much coverage it would get. Vice wanted to do a thing on it. A bunch of documentaries reached out to me. What I was really hoping for was like, can we just publish this to the cybersecurity community? I messaged like all the things, Bleeping Computer, all of them. Unfortunately, I couldn't get any of them to really cover it. So none of that really panned out because I didn't want to be the focus of this stuff. I don't feel comfortable with that. So it ended up working out though, because a few of the platforms actually reached out and got intelligence from me about how to kind of take care of this. So that was really good. It was really awesome to see them take some kind of proactive measures on this. And then the other big thing was that the IOCs and the intelligence and everything, even though like I didn't get any publicity for, I don't really care about that, because it was Mandiant and Google and everybody else, they published all their stuff and they included the IPs and everything in it. And Michael and everybody, Mr. Barnhart did as well. And so either way, the intelligence got out there, and I'm very happy with that. So I don't know how much it's saved companies. I don't technically know how much impact it's had, but I really hope it has had a big impact. So now that we've talked about this entire infiltration, let's talk about what's next, and then all the information you need to defend against it. So what's next is they're using more and more of these front workers to bypass the existing measures. So this is continuing to spread, these new techniques, and then also they're spreading into other countries as well. So this is becoming way more popular in Europe than in the United States because we're doing a good job here of defending against it. It's also started to pop up in South America as well. So they're changing their targets and going after more industries as well. They're not just targeting IT anymore. They've done civil architecture blueprints and designs. They've done all sorts of super weird kind of offshoots of this that are just different industries they're going after and doing this kind of work. Once the companies can catch on, and this is a little bit older, that a lot of them have caught on to this now, the take control features. So disabling those, it's going to be harder for them. So the next thing they're going to have to use is IP KVMs. because if AnyDesk is blocked, if all that stuff is blocked, then they have to use the KVMs. And the unfortunate thing is that with IP KVMs, a lot of the nicer models, you can modify the USB data. You can modify everything and make it look just like a normal human input device. You can make it look just like a normal keyboard, which is really bad for the defenders, because if it's an IP KVM, if everything looks normal, how do you detect this? And there is hope, actually, super recent hope. This is a picture from an article about Amazon, where they did a really interesting thing where they took the keyboard input lag, which is, they can't get rid of that, right? If they're based in the APAC region, there's always going to be some network lag. And so there's ways you can detect it through that network lag systematically. And we don't know how Amazon did it, but I theorize that you can make a simple test, just like maybe like a little game that you have on your computer. It pops up maybe once or twice a day, and it takes a stimulus that appears on screen and measures the time it takes for someone to click or interact with that stimulus. Now, just one day of that data is not enough. You won't be able to detect anything. But over enough time and with good baseline measurements for each region and each person, you'd be able to systematically detect the anomalies and detect whether someone's remotely viewing their screen or not. I hope you guys can follow that, and I think it's a great idea. It's not just my idea either. I've seen this on Twitter as well, or X or whatever, you know, I think this is probably how Amazon is doing it, or some sort of data collection they have that doesn't involve a game. But I think that's the future of where this might go, the solutions that might be implemented. So keep an eye out for that. I'm trying to see if any company publishes a tool for this, or a technique, or something more useful than just those words. If I do, I'll make sure to post it somewhere so you guys can use it. The other problem is that this has kind of been forged by people already, all the techniques for this. There's this big trend that came out in 2020, 2021, the overemployed thing, people working multiple remote jobs, taking in huge amounts of money. The thing is, though, is that the techniques you use for evade detection when you're overemployed are the same techniques you use for the North Koreans. So they can just go to overemployed.com, which should be right here, a picture of it, and they can just see the exact IPKVM they need to buy. They can see the configuration they need to use. It's a how-to guide for them. I'm amazed they haven't found it yet. I'm sure some of the more sophisticated groups have, because they're not all the same. There's different levels depending on the cell. But we can expect that this is the type of information that's out there, with it being so freely available, that eventually they're going to pick up on these things, right? Oh, and one more thing about that. Another big problem is that when you're overemployed and you have more than one job, you're often contracting out your job, which means you're often contracting to North Koreans who are on Upwork, they're on Fiverr, they're on all these platforms. So even if you think you're being safe about it, you're really not. And ITWs aren't the only risk from DPRK. You can't see it on my screen here, but they don't need to infiltrate your company. They can just walk right through the front door with info stealers and credentials, right? So if it's going to be, for example, the Bybit hack, they used a single credential from an info stealer that they collected by sending out a phishing campaign to all their different staff, right? So credentials are a huge part of this. And I have to give myself a little plug here. The company I work for, AlertsBar, we provide a solution to detect and mitigate these stolen credentials fast. We actually provide alerts faster than the leading company, Recorded Future, 4 to 5 times. And we're cheaper, a lot cheaper. So if you want to talk about this afterwards, I'd love to give you, I'd love to talk to you about it. And also, this data opens up a really, really interesting opportunity. You can't see it on the screen, but I found that in the world of info stealers, North Koreans actually infect themselves a lot with their own info stealers. So we have a little bit of an eye into the intranet of North Korea, into that hidden kind of network. And I've actually been able to pull a lot of their hidden CCTLDs that they have registered that they can only access in country using like a VPN, or if they're physically there. Some of those are Wi-Fi.kp, hotspot.kp. Those are often used when you're out. There's actually a very common thing where if you're outside of North Korea, they have VPNs for you. There was an article that exposed one a while ago that they were giving access to for North Korean citizens that are not in North Korea physically. And so I think there's a lot of exciting research that we can do about this, and that's kind of the direction of where this is going next, and I look forward to doing a talk on that sometime. But now let's get into the solutions. the boring but really, really important stuff. First off, just a kind of no-brainer. If your company can afford it, hand out company laptops with an EDR pre-installed. Please, 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 please. Also do this for contractors and freelancers. I know it's expensive. I know it's difficult. I know it sucks. But if they can use their own computer, this will happen. And what I've also seen a lot is the people that are called innies, right, where you have somebody in a company and you go and you recruit them to do bad things, oftentimes they're not recruited, right? They install an info stealer or a rat from some ad on Google that they thought was Audacity, but it's actually malware, right? And now all of a sudden, even though they're not physically located anywhere near the company, they're just some employee of a BPO in India, they have access to customer service information. They have access to all this information. So a lot of these problems can be solved by an EDR, a good EDR that's well maintained, the rules are well maintained, just to get rid of those easy ends, right? And then keep up with threat intelligence on the ITW threat, please. The EDR is, unless you have a team doing it for you, is useless without adding the IP ranges, the hashes, and everything else that is good and useful from this research. We also collected, again, a lot of IPs from Rust Desk. Those are available on, I know you saw it for a second, but Farnsworth Intelligence is a company I had a while ago. Technically still a thing, but it's on that website, fwintel.com, and it's linked in the presentation. Now, another thing you can add is Spur's IP list. So Spur is a company that does IP. They release for free a list of the VPNs, IPs belonging to actual VPN, which we found North Korea almost exclusively uses outside of residential proxy networks. So if you block all the IPs from actual VPN, or at least heavily flag them, it will make a big difference. Now, the next big thing, and this is probably the one that you're most interested in, is turn off the take/leave control features in Teams and Google Meet. Unfortunately, with Google Meet, you just have to disable all third-party add-ons. There's no other option. You can't just disable TeamViewer. So that one is kind of all or nothing. But the rest, you can just disable the give control feature. So you can still use everything the same. And then again, there is IDEX in-depth DPRK report and threat advisory page, which is even more in-depth. Highly recommend reading that. All the different things that you can detect are going to be in there. Recruiters, train staff. I know this is hard. We are not HR, we're cybersecurity. It's impossible. We try really hard. But when you do have the opportunity to tell all the different business units in your company what to do and not to do, one of the things you should tell them to do is during online interviews, if you're not in person, have them do the basics. So now the new one is put your fingers into your face. This is important because they're getting better. But depth, so the colors that different depths in your face make are really hard to do still. So if you press your fingers into your face, it's harder for them to replicate that. And then also one that's still really hard for them to do is moving your face back and forth really quickly, because it'll lose the tracking on it and you'll see it tear on the edges. So that one's also pretty good as well. But the putting your hand in front of your face is becoming less good, just so you guys know. And then ask the person to say something bad about Kim Jong-un. Of course, this only works on the lower level of it, but it's still important. Ask the person to show the space where they are conducting the interview in. That's a big one. If they're working out of one of these apartments, or even in the US out of a laptop farm with their facilitator, that will often be in the room. So this adds another layer of complexity for their operations, but they will have to have a separate room that's just for interviews. So that will make their job a lot harder. And then also, ask specific, very specific questions about the city they claim to live in. So ask them their favorite restaurant, their favorite pizza restaurant, or something that you know the answer to or can pre-get the answer to before you ask them, and then see how they respond. One of the things you're looking for is that delay. So do they have like an internet issue right as you ask them that? Do they have, do they say and kind of pause and delay while they do something in the background? So those are things that you can look for when they're answering that question. The next thing is the background check. Oh my goodness, what are these background checks? We need to be verifying employment history, actually verifying it, which you can't just do by calling them. I would say a good route, it's not great, I don't like that this exists, but there is a database by Equifax called the work number. And the work number gets data from all of our employers through systems like ADP that have our payroll. They automatically report that data. So they have your salary history, how much you've made, exactly how long you worked there, not just like your estimate that you put on LinkedIn, and everything else. So if they're lying about the most recent position, this is one way you can more concretely confirm that. Education verification needs to happen. For some reason, this is very uncommon. I've talked to registrar offices, and they say they get like 1 or 2 calls a month from companies trying to verify and actually get a copy of your graduation and record and everything else. Just getting that information, getting a diploma or anything from the person isn't really enough because they can fake that diploma. They can lie about their education history. And then for like their email address might be helpful, because if you search an ITW's email address, it'll pop up in threat intelligence reports, and it'll pop up in reports about DPRK and things like that. So you can often discover the inconsistencies there. For me, you could have found it instantly if you looked my name up, because I have 2 LinkedIns for this, so they could have found a second LinkedIn, and that would have been the end of it. So there's little things you can do like that can make a big difference. Of course, for another thing you can have them do is attend regular video meetings. So I know I hated stand-ups when I was in software development, but this would be a really effective way to catch them, because if every company does a stand-up at 9 a.m., right, crack of the dawn of the morning, you're not going to be able to do 10 of them at once, right? You're going to have to be in all of those meetings. So that can be an effective way to make it difficult for them. You can require people to, I'm not saying this is a good idea, but this is an option. So you can require people to do in-person tests or processes. So that could be a physical, a drug test, a notarized document, fingerprinting services. I wish there was a service that banks or somebody did where you could just go in and do like a KYC in person, but that doesn't exist as far as I know. The only thing that's kind of similar to that is like a fingerprinting service. So for right now, these are kind of the only things you can kind of get everywhere in the United States and require somebody to do it before they get a job. I know it's not great, but those are your options. You can also require employees to attend in-person company events, retreats, conferences, DEF CON, etc., at least once a year. It's really hard for North Koreans to attend DEF CON for obvious reasons. So those are some other ideas. You could also require them, this again gets into the privacy issues and things, you can require them to document the environment they work in from home. Again, that goes back to if they're in a laptop farm or if they're in a ITW like apartment, it's very obvious from the environment they work in. So this could be an option, but again, it gets iffy, right? Because it's privacy, right? It's our home. So those are all ideas that might work. So for managers, ensure employees are participating during regular meetings like stand-ups. If somebody doesn't know what the heck they do for work and they're asked to talk about it, that's a huge red flag. If they can't deeply explain the code that they apparently wrote themselves, that's a big red flag. Things like that are things that you can look for in those sort of inconsistencies. And look for things like voices changing, their English suddenly becoming very broken, or them not being able to explain the work, right? Because that comes back to the North Koreans are the ones doing the work, the person that's facilitating doesn't have a clue, and if they're in these meetings, they have to kind of fib that. Concluding thoughts, you can't see it here, but the ITW I spent months talking to changed their profile picture to IMDb after I published my findings. Fortunately for them, they're not getting an IMDb credit anytime soon. I'm not going to help them get a job, and hopefully neither are any of you. That's it. Okay, questions? What you got? Yeah, it's pretty serious. The woman from Arizona, Chapman, she was sentenced to, I don't remember the exact years, but it was a lot of years. And any years in prison is bad anyways. So, yeah, so she was managing the laptop farm. She wasn't like doing the interviews. I believe she also helped with identity theft at one point, so there was some identity theft related charges potentially. But I don't remember if it was exactly wire fraud. That's a good guess, though. It's probably that. It's usually that. Go ahead.
So what was the incentive for you on your side? So you were farming out the work to them, and they were giving you a kickback, or part of the
Yeah, so
salary?
it was briefly mentioned, but the incentive for a facilitator would have been I would have gotten 35% of the salary for doing none of the work, essentially. So if you're doing 10 of those jobs, you can imagine that's a lot of money, things like that. There's a lot of tech people in that position right now, so it's particularly a bad time for that. And to get back to your question, though, I wanted to say they do definitely lie and manipulate the facilitators into believing that this is legal, that this is safe, that this is like they said that this is not going to be a problem. You didn't lie to them, right? So that they'll make you think that this is okay in the beginning to get you involved until it's too late. Kind of like the Chapman story. The way that she described it was that before, when she started to get into it too far, it was already too late by then. So I'm sure there's a lot of people in the United States who are doing this right now. It's too hard to say how many, but there've been that arrest of that woman in Arizona. There've also been arrests in there have been arrests of I forget where it was, but it was a few Chinese nationals who came to the United States and then started doing this at some point. There was also one other arrest, but I can't remember the exact details off the top of my head right now. So there have definitely been consequences for this, and the other thing is it's very trackable. So any of my non-white hat friends in this room, don't do this because it's incredibly trackable. It's easy to track. It was super easy for them to track Chapman. It would be super easy for them to track real address. It's connecting to your network, all that stuff. So it's definitely very manipulative, though, I would say. Go ahead.
So these IT tech workers, based on what we know, are they any good? Are they getting promoted?
Some of them are actually.
They're like, oh, we lost Dustin. He was a North Korean front.
It's a little bit of a joke, actually, that the coworker that you've never seen in the office before that's like just killing it. It's like a 10x worker is actually the North Korean, right? If you had to do only one thing for 16 hours a day, like 7 days a week, I think you'd be pretty decent at it. And some of them are pretty good. The problem is that it's a broad variety, right? So I've talked to some of them who've said that they're burning jobs. What they do is called churn and burn. So they'll get a job for like 2 weeks, do nothing, get fired immediately, then do that over and over and over again. So they're just getting like that first week or two of salary, but that's still a lot of money with a tech job if you do that over and over again. And then another thing they'll do is if there is a cell that's really successful, they'll have multiple jobs at once. So they could have 10 jobs at the same time, I've heard, as like on the highest end, and then you're earning $100,000 a month. And that's a lot of money. And also there's a lot of AI usage. There's been a specific, I think it's called Kimsuki or something similar to that, is the name of the university that they've started building up in China. Not in China, sorry, in North Korea, near Pyongyang. And this university they're actually working with other universities in Russia and China to share information about AI, about how to utilize AI in practice and utilize it for these operations. And that's part of how they're scaling it, because you're right, not all of them can be 10x guys, I guess, who are just doing really awesome work and not getting fired. Some of them are going to be bad, but if they can use AI to kind of they're doing.
Any idea which models they're rallying around? Like DeepSeek or Claude?
They're using all of them, I'm pretty sure. I've seen them use not just models as well. They'll use resume editors, like AI resume editors. They'll use AI as resume editors to generate like 10 resumes for all the different jobs they're going to apply to. So it's a good mix. They definitely do use DeepSeek, though. I've seen that specifically in documentation. So they use them all, though. Go ahead.
Since the goal seems to be for them to get money, one of the things we've heard that North Korea likes to do is the batch ransomware. They'll get in a bunch of places and then they'll burn them all at once so that there isn't time for other companies to learn. Do you see much pivoting from the get a bunch of big employees and then use that as a tool for larger ransomware operations? Because if they're ransoming for the Colonial Pipeline, you can do 20 of those at once, and you've got employees at 100 companies. You can
Yeah.
we need 20 million this week. Hit 5 companies.
I agree. I agree. That's exactly what I would think would happen if this was like the most sophisticated groups you could think of. But unfortunately, I just haven't seen any evidence of cooperation between the sophisticated groups who are launching real cyber attacks like that and the less sophisticated cells who are just doing the ITW labor. There is a lot of not necessarily pollination, but cross. Work where some cells might do more than just ITW. So they also might do the interview thing, which is another scam or technique they're doing where they're pretending to be, let's say, like a journalist, emailing people, and then telling them to run a script on their computer to fix Zoom because the camera's not working, or to give them control of their device so they can just fix it for them back when that was more easier to do, right? So some of them are evolving and becoming more advanced, but the level of communication and coordination between the different operations doesn't seem that sophisticated yet. But again, it's just one step for them to take that. So I can only imagine that's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, not if. Go ahead.
I know they said PayPal was acceptable, and maybe cryptocurrency. Do you know what that looks like? Like once you would send in that money, do they launder it, or where does it go from there?
Yeah, so it's very similar to how they launder the funds from, let's say, like a Bybit attack. They're going to so oftentimes first they'll move it through bank accounts because that's where it comes to first. It comes to your bank account usually for salary. And then they'll move it to them either directly straight through a crypto, or they'll go PayPal and then crypto, Payoneer and then crypto. Once it's in crypto, North Korea has not been the best at mixing their funds. They're actually pretty trackable, but they do get them out of crypto pretty quickly through OTC or over-the-counter traders in often like Dubai or other places like that. And then once it's out of the crypto, they're good. So that's usually how they launder it. Go ahead. Uh, Honestly, yeah. Just set up a Fiverr and an Upwork. Talk to a lawyer probably, and then I don't want to give it away. There's just a little. There's one more step, but if you're super willing to do this and you actually want to do it, come talk to me afterwards. I might give you some more, but there is a way that you can find them instead of them coming to you. There is a way. Go ahead.
I don't want to be a downer on that, but you've been concerned about retaliation from the operations.
Yes, 0 days scare me. They do. The reality is that I don't think I'm a big enough fish for them yet at all. But if I did, yeah, that would be even more of a concern. One thing that I've been worried about is like, well, I have really good ops, but I'm doing everything right, but I can't defend against a 0 day, and they are known to use 0 days. So keeping up to date on patches and everything has been a big priority for me. Good.
So you in your reverse, phishing with them, you used a fake identity so that you wouldn't be as easily traced, or?
They know who I am. I had to use my real Fiverr. So, but if I were to do this again, I would not use my real identity. It was very convenient for this particular scenario. I wouldn't do that again, though. I wouldn't recommend it at all. You will need to create a very convincing persona, though, if you're going to do it through a fake identity, because they're going to actually use that for the interviews. And okay, go ahead.
Again, the example you're talking about was conditional identity verification.
Mhm.
I worked for a military contractor here in Madison. When I applied for, worked for W-2 and
Yep.
driver's license, I also had to provide an additional form of verification, like identity. I provided my birth certificate, so I got that.
Yep.
But they were like, with my level, I don't. But
Was it like a public trust type thing?
what do you mean by public trust?
It wasn't public trust then. You would have known if it was public trust. The nice thing about the position that I had gotten a verbal offer for is that it was a public trust position. So even if I had gotten the job and taken it, they would have had to do more verification steps because I was working with sensitive information. So that nothing to concern there. But what's interesting about what you just said is you've just described only the I-9 verification process. So you only had to submit a birth certificate and one other form of valid ID, probably like a driver's license. That's easy to get on anywhere, on Telegram.
As you said, they can bypass that.
Yep.
So that's more what they're looking for.
Yep, yep. Okay, anybody else? Go ahead, Brad.
Are there any other weird industries they've been attacking? I mean, like you talked about, tech industry, coders, that sort of thing. Have you heard about any others?
Oh, jeez.
Surprising.
No, I mean they heavily target Web3 and crypto, which is kind of the same thing. But software development and IT in general is such a broad field. There's so many different jobs and careers you can do in that they've just kind of stuck with that for the most part. The only one that I've seen was the civil architecture designs, where they're doing, like on Upwork, they're doing designs for architecture firms or something like that, and then they're signing off on it with their fake notarized stamp as well. So it's like, that one's a little crazy to me. I don't know how they got into that one. Go ahead.
Did they deploy any custom implants into your cloud VM after the remote access tooling was installed?
So the most they did that when I was monitoring it is they opened up like a user agent checker and an IP checker to see like where the device was located and if they could use the IP. Because one of the big things is they need that good residential IP that's not flagged. And so that they're checking for that pretty quickly as soon as you set up the device. I did lots of scans of antivirus and did some manual checks after it was done. Besides the files that were meant to be there, there was nothing on the device. So that's where, like, I think that comes back to they're not that sophisticated necessarily. At least not that cell. Go ahead. I was in contact him up until the first story came out, and that's when I sent him like a link. And I was honestly, these are real people at the end of the day, and I was worried about their safety. If this came out and they got in trouble for it, like this is North Korea, they might die. And so I wanted to give him a chance to do something. If he's not in North Korea, he could run. So I sent him the article and was like, do whatever you need to do, run. I'm sorry about this. Nothing, no response, and that's when they changed the profile picture later on to that IMDb thing. I don't keep in contact with any North Koreans anymore, though. Not officially. Allegedly. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.